with us, and we want you to know that if you choose to call in or comment, that you may do so at 858-251-6111. That's 858-251-6111. Or you may go to godradio1.com, and we are streaming on YouTube, on the Voice and Viewpoint website, and on Facebook. And so, in addition to this program airing now as we are doing, and we're interviewing our guests on Zoom, the program will be archived after it's done, and you will always be able to go back, pull it up, and refer others to it, and we encourage you to do so. And so with that being said, before I introduce our guests, I would always like to acknowledge my companion here, Dr. Leonard J. Thompson III. Boy, it must be nice to have a 3 behind your name. I can't get there. Dr. Thompson.
Well, good evening, everyone. Just so excited about being here and to be among friends. And I'm excited about our council member and President Pro Tem being here. So I'm like, let's get it on.
Okay. Well, our guest this evening is council member for the 4th District and President Pro Tem of the San Diego City Council, Mrs. Monica Montgomery Stepp. And so she is serving a term now, and it's going to be up for renewal, but she's done such a phenomenal job in terms of so many issues that are confronting us. And we wanted to have her here this evening because she chairs a very important committee, Neighborhood and Public Safety. And we know with the kind of things we see going on with law enforcement that we really have some issues. Just last night, I saw her on the news as they were talking about the proposed Protection Act and how the police department, the POA, is up in arms against it. And my attitude is if the POA is against something, then we all should be for it, just because they are against it. So what we'd like to do is have President Pro Tem take a few minutes to share the things that are dear and important to her heart, mention her district, the things she wants to say about that. And we're going to do those things, and then we're going to get into some specifics, and we're going to just make the best of this time. Madam President Pro Tem.
Dr. Warren, thank you so much for having me. It's always good to sit and talk with you. And Dr. Leonard Thompson, thank you so much. Like you said, we're amongst friends, and so it's always good when I can come to a platform that we know is very broad and that, will give the real deal. Sometimes we get little snippets here and there from other media, but it's good to sit and talk, have a real conversation. So yeah, I am the District 4 representative, also the council president pro tem of the city council, which just really just means that I will carry on meetings and chair meetings, provided the council president may not be there. But it's interesting the way that that whole thing has transpired, because I think that we are working with a council that realizes we need to be a stronger council and really take on our power as a legislative body. And so my role has kind of been a little bit more than it is on paper with that collaboration with the council president. So I'm grateful for that, but District 4 voters put me in office. So when I'm there, I'm advocating for District 4 voters. And it's very, very important to make that distinction. These are not citywide elected races. These are district elected races. So we take the priorities of our community members to the city and take those priorities through a bureaucracy, one that really has really intentionally built barriers, for folks like the ones in my community that I grew up with. And we try to, take those down brick by brick, so that everybody can have access to the same types of things. So, we do that. Dr. Warren, you mentioned the Public Safety Committee, Public Safety in Livable Neighborhoods. Very, very important committee, as you stated, because we are dealing with a lot of issues around racial profiling, disparate treatment in law enforcement, but we're also dealing with a lack of funding in communities south of the 8 when it comes to our parks, our recreation centers, code enforcement, making our communities more livable. And so the committee covers that as well. I want to just point out that we have, I think, made significant progress at the city, changing the conversation around how these resources will be diverted to communities that have been have experienced a major disinvestment. We can point to a record funding of our streets by the tune of $40 million for streets that are in districts 4, 8, and 9. One of the issues with that, and this is important to the community, right? Because they go up north and they're like, well, what the heck? Why does District 4 look the way that it looks? And it's really because we have to pay attention to detail. When we're talking to policy changes and systemic changes, those things don't happen overnight, and they also don't happen if we're not paying attention to detail. So how we got that additional funding was saying, look, our streets are older, so they actually need more construction. So that costs more. So you need to allot more money to it, instead of just accepting kind of what city staff was giving us. So, that's one example. There are a lot of others, but those are the things that are important to our community members. Affordable housing is just something that is getting farther and farther out of reach to live in the city. So there's so many tasks that we have and things that we have to figure out at the city.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you really quickly, because so many come to mind as we're having this little bit of time here. I'm very concerned when we talk about housing. We know we've had our challenges with the Housing Commission, but there's been a resistance to rent control, and then we have landlord and tenant courts, and many of the people who are judges on the bench are landlords. And so they are ruling in favor of the landlords repeatedly. And so we got all of these new buildings going up, very little space allocated for low-income folks, and a lot of them just sitting empty. Venture capitalists are building them. And it seems like there must be a bit more when the number of people on the street are increasing. The eviction levels are up. We've seen the scandal surrounding the way the sheriff's department was politically enforcing evictions against certain people that turned out to have been connected to the former sheriff or friends or neighbors or what have you. How do you all see you all handling that, especially you're looking for a new person to head up the Housing Commission? What do you see as a priority in that mix that I just threw out?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot, and it's comprehensive because this impacts so many people. I do, when we're talking about homelessness in particular, we know that the way to alleviate homelessness is through housing. Now, you also talk about, having empty homes and empty apartments that may be too expensive. We do need to dive deeper into what our vacancy rate actually is, because we are building housing and we need to continue to build housing. And I will advocate for that because, I'm talking to young people every day that just are trying to stay in San Diego and keep their talent here and just really cannot afford it. And that's a very real thing. So, growing out our communities in a smart way, not in a concrete jungle type way, but in a smart way, is going to be a priority of mine. But at the same time, rent control, holding, landlords accountable, and we can. Here's the thing, we cannot simplify these issues. There are landlords that have huge portfolios that are, buying up, 500, apartment complexes. And then there are folks who invested in 1 or 2 homes that are renting. So there is there's a stark difference between those two. And we accordingly need to make our laws as such. that we are enforcing where we need to enforce, and that we are not punishing where we don't need to punish, right? And so that is a nuanced approach to all of our laws, but particularly in housing, because it's to every, it's not a one size fits all. It's not. People have different housing needs, and we have to certainly address that. I will say the last thing I'll say is just mention a few things that we have been able to do. One is I've always been an advocate of homeownership. We do have people in the middle income who can't quite afford to get a down payment together, but could afford a mortgage if they had the opportunity. So we have the Black Homeownership Program that's been very, very successful. We're working on other efforts for BIPOC community, the communities of color, to be able to get that type of down payment assistance. I think that's very, very important to all of us, because there are different levels of housing. And then we have to have a balanced approach to how we build out our communities. We do need some single family homes being built. We do need apartments being built, but it just depends on how we do it and where we do it. And of course, what we have to understand is in all of our systems, there is discrimination in all of our systems. So we always have to check for that. And we always have to monitor that and hold people accountable when the numbers are showing that they are not appropriately, distributing the housing. And, we cannot ignore that. And so it's complicated, but, we are working towards it, and we have allotted hundreds of millions of dollars for people to be able to pay their rent through the pandemic.
Dr. Thompson?
One of the things I want to ask is going to be a two-part question. First of all, is that growing up in the community, I was very fortunate to be able to buy in my community and return back to my community to serve. Is there any structure or any plan? So I have a lot of young people that are trying to return to the community and want to live in the community, but every time they get on a lottery list, every time they apply for an apartment, they never seem to be selected. Is there, number one, any way that people that grew up in the community, that live in the community, parents are still there, have a, kind of a first right of refusal in that process, number one? And number two would be, as we travel down the Imperial Corridor, we're still struggling with when that will be finished up. So those are the two questions that I wanted to ask.
Yeah, we did something in a community plan in Barrio Logan, and we'll see how it turns out. But it is it's not for generations, but if a person has lived in the community, they get a first right of refusal to some of the new units that are being built, and that's to prevent gentrification. So, in building out, we do need to look at that. It is possible, of course, avoiding equal protection rights and all of that has to pass that legal muster. But if, as opposed to someone getting kicked out of their community, that should be an option for people for sure. Also, just our offices here as a resource. So not only will we try our best to get these lists out as soon as possible, or for people to apply, we can, check in on certain things as needed. So please use us as a resource when it comes to that. And with regard to Imperial Avenue revitalization, which is it's a thorn in our side in District 4. We've been talking about the revitalization for decades. And it looks like we have been talking about that for decades. But what we did recently, and what should be coming to council the week prior to Juneteenth, which already passed through committee, is a designation of the Black Arts and Culture District. So what we're going to do there is build out an entire land use plan, design and the like, so that whatever comes in can be under the umbrella of the Black Arts and Culture District. And we're doing that also to drive economic investment. People are super, super excited about this. And so I think that would be something that will uplift our community. What we're also doing right now, as the city is concerned, is we are trying to revamp Marie Whitman Park, which is, of course, right at that corner, right? As a catalyst for what will happen down those 8 blocks. And, I have to give shout out to our community members that have been leading on that, Dahan Blevins and Leah Goodman. And, a lot of people have been leading on that, for a long time. So I always want to give credit where credit is due. I know I'm probably missing some people, but there's a whole committee that meets. And that is the plan. And for me, that is a legacy plan. I plan to have a good foundation of where we will move forward with that revitalization before I leave office.
Okay. I know we were experiencing a little sound issue there, Dr. Thompson. Did we get that?
Yes, sir. I actually unmuted myself.
Oh.
I had muted myself.
Oh, okay. Okay. We wanted to make sure we got that. Madam President Pro Tem, the last redistricting effort made some changes, and I'm not sure if all the people understand whether those changes are in the district boundaries are in effect for the primary coming up on June 7th, or whether it's going to be later. So could you mention that and the impact on the 4th District?
Yeah,
going forward
absolutely.
Briefly? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a little bit confusing because it will impact the actual elections. So during the redistricting process, District 4 lost our most northern communities in Rolando Park and Redwood Village, and then we're going out west to Mountain View, and then we picked up Ridgeview.
Go back over that real slowly so people can hear it. Mm-hmm. We lost Rolando
Park,
right,
and Redwood Village.
Okay.
Those are going back to District 9.
Okay, to District 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so then Mountain View, which was previously a District 4 neighborhood, we have parts of Mountain View now, but small parts.
Okay.
So redistricting gave us, of course, the larger area of Mountain View, and also Ridgeview, which is near our Webster community.
Okay.
But here's the thing: they will affect the primary and general elections. So folks that live in those communities can vote for their District 4 representative, but they're technically not under the governing structure. We are not yet the office that serves those communities until after November.
Yeah, and so that was the one thing, because I was on this site today and I did notice that the district boundaries seem to be the old boundaries and not the new boundaries. Is that correct?
Well, that is probably accurate, because from a government perspective, we still are serving the constituents in Rolando Park and Redwood Village.
Well, let me say that this week and next week, and because there are 2-3 weeks going toward the primary, the Voice and Viewpoint is publishing not only its endorsement in terms of people that are running for office, but we're also publishing the voting sites, the zip codes, the actual places that people can vote or go drop off their ballots, and we're partnering with the Register of Voters to do this, and we're making it repeatedly available because people are already voting. They're turning in their absentee ballots, and some are driving to these points, and so we're making sure that the points are there. What's been missing, Dr. Thompson, this time is you really haven't had a lot of discussion about the election or about the primary, okay? And the people who are running have put the organization supporting them, those political action committees that are not supposed to be connected to the campaign. Those people are putting those dollars in direct mail, and so we're seeing that, and we're seeing an impact across the board. We're also seeing some people who are not on the ballot right now because they're not being challenged, and so we're going to deal with those things later. But I thought it was important, because for people to not vote, and your position, let's not play down your being President Pro Tem, because Mayor Gloria was President Pro Tem of the City Council following the exodus of Mayor Filner. and we had a chance to show that he could be presidential, and he came back, and now, so I don't think that we should downplay the number two positions, because the number two positions are very important, and the people doing them are very important, and so we have issues. Just say a word, if we can, about this Protect Act that's there, because I believe it's coming through your committee, and
Yeah.
it's had one reading. It's going to come back, and let me just say this, if I may. And you're the lawyer. I've been away from this for 50 years, but just about everything, as I recall, that deals with stop and search goes back to I think it was Map v. Ohio, and they had these early Supreme Court decisions that talked about letting a police officer use his experience and his knowledge to make a determination. And now with this act, we're going back to probable cause rather than reasonable assumptions. And I was very disturbed as I saw scenarios where police stop people on pretext, just like we've seen some of the shootings that have taken place. And then they end up searching a vehicle. And people don't understand that they don't automatically have a right to search their vehicle. So say a word about this, because your district is impacted. And, I mean, we've got people in Black Men and Women United that are being pulled over by the cops. Have they pulled you over yet, Dr. Thompson?
Yes, I've been pulled over.
Okay, they don't ever pull me over. I think they read my tags and decide not to bother me. But they don't ever pull me over. I'd be waiting to get pulled over. They just won't do it. So I think it's important. We'll go right ahead, please.
Yeah, and everything you said was absolutely right. It's as opposed to allowing officers to use the discretion under that reasonable suspicion standard, which is a very subjective standard. It would be more of a probable cause standard, which it requires that some facts and circumstances will allow you or prompt you to pull somebody over, not just a pretext or profiling, racial profiling. This is, as you can see, really is not supported by the Police Officers Association at all. So much so that they, decided to personally attack me and blame me for all the violence across the city that happens in the parks, right? So we were able to combat that narrative very well. But the point is, this is what change looks like. And when I talk about, every year when when the MLK, our observation day in honor of MLK comes around, I take the time in council to talk about the fact that when Martin Luther King Jr. was doing what he was doing, he was hated. Okay, so these things are not popular, but it is what is needed when we talk about real justice for people. And that I see that the Protect Act is kind of, in that vein, in that we are changing the standard. And officers are telling us, well, let me just say the POA, officer representation, is telling us that they're using these pretext stops and the like as a tool of enforcement. And what is that really saying? You fill in that blank. But I think it's very important. I will say I do not have a date yet where we're going to bring it to committee yet. It's going through its legal analysis, and we've also done a lot of work around these spaces with surveillance and CPP and stuff, and we're waiting for those things to come out.
Do you think you're going to get enough votes to pass it in the council when it comes through committee? Will you get enough to get it out of committee, or will they buy off everybody?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to put it forward, and I really, just based on some of the the Brown Act stuff, I can't necessarily ask for votes ahead of time. I just hope, one thing that I have been focused on is we're going to bring all this to light. And we're going to have this robust conversation that needs to be had. And the hope is that we can modernize policing and get it out of what its inception was, which was slave patrol.
Well,
can do that
let's
because
make
we
something.
still have people that policing is important. The law enforcement, I've never been about just complete abolishing, but I think if you're going to do it and take half of the budget, then you need to do it right, and everyone needs to be treated fairly and equally.
Well, let's just keep a couple of things clear because they tried last night when I looked at this on the news to talk about how many guns they've been able to collect as a result of the pretext stop, okay? And I remember New York City went through the same thing and they had all of this stuff, but that's not the intent. It's not supposed to take place. And the inference from that kind of news coverage is that all the guns on the street are in our neighborhoods. And that's not true because all the guns on the street are not in our neighborhood. All we have to do is look at the gun exchange that takes place in other parts of the county and look at the arsenal that people are turning in. And I can tell you in East County, they have arsenals. I can tell you that when Barack Obama was elected president, the gun show sales, the assault weapon sales went to women. And ammunition sales skyrocketed so that Walmart started rationing bullets because they were buying all of this stuff. And so it's not us, just like we're dealing with the NRA right now. Black people are still not armed as they could be. I know there are some black gun associations and people are beginning to join and understand the importance of having weapons in their homes. We're not advocating that folks become armed and start carrying weapons. This is not Texas, where you can just, strap on Clint Eastwood and go outside. But at the same time, we don't know where it's going to strike next just because of what we see going on.
Just, Dr. Warren, just on that point, I mean, and I say this often as well, too, we use data to make our policy decisions. Well, for this, we have the data. The data shows us through the SDSU report. I think UCSD did a report. The Campaign Zero did a report. The Center for Policing Equity, which the police department commissioned to do a report. That report shows just what you said, that even when you account for demographics, because let me go back. One of the excuses for this racial profiling that was seen in the data was that, well, there are more Black folks that are homeless, so there's more contact and interaction with them. First of all, that's not even a good thing to say, nor an excuse for profiling. But even when you do account for all of the income levels and all those demographics, we're still 4 times more likely to be stopped and less likely to have contraband. That's what the data tells us over and over and over again. So like I said, we have to have the conversation because, I've been very clear about this. And I think we do certainly need change, and that's what I have to hope for and fight for.
So
thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Thompson.
I like this. Now I'm gonna go to a quality of life, and I'm gonna take you back to when we were growing up, and we went and we had late night. It was Bob Big Boys, and then it went from Bob Big Boys to Alley's, and then it went from Alley's to Coco's. Now it's vacant, and we're having a lot of new construction, new apartments, new everything. What is there a action plan to actually bring in more restaurants, commercial and non-commercial, into our community to serve the ever-increasing population?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have on, and it's certainly not a replacement for Coco's. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But we do have healthy food options coming, into the district, when some of this building out will give us that. There will be sit down, but not restaurants yet, like where you are served. We are certainly working on that. Have some announcements coming up very soon that I hope to be able to share with the community once deals are closed. But there will be on Euclid, there will be, there's going to be an El Pollo Loco coming in there, and also another store that's a pretty popular chain coming in there. So it is, starting to, that interest is going. At the top of Hilltop and Euclid, what I want people to know too is that yes, you will see the buildings of the apartments on the other side of that. there are 47 for-sale homes being built. And that in there, they are also providing assistance for first-time home buyers and keeping the amount of at least a good percentage of those at a very affordable rate, so people can actually buy. And at the bottom of those, there's a commercial space, which there has been interest from restaurants, but I just want to make sure we seal those deals first before we set that expectation of people. What has happened in our community is that we have been lied to, and told things that didn't actually come to fruition. So I've been trying my best not to do that and to be very real and just say, I agree with you. We are working on it very, very hard. And I really believe that the community will be pleased with some of the things that are going to come out of this next 4 years.
I want to be fair to you and folks because, I've tracked this restaurant thing for the past 25 or 30 years. And there are reasons why restaurants don't survive in our community. All we have to do is look at Market Creek, and we look at Magnolias, and before then, and Felix, and all of these entities that have come there, and Castaneda, the Hispanic place there. I've never seen a Hispanic taco shop or restaurant close. I'm sorry, there's one. The place in Mission Valley, that's the only one I've ever seen.
El Tritos.
Yeah, that closed, but they always survive. And so part of it is that unlike Cheers, our community, we don't go out every night like in Hillcrest or City Heights or Golden Hills, and we're not the lonely people that hang out in the bars and the restaurants, and even when we did have restaurants and we had the original Black Chamber, my late wife and I always made sure that we had luncheons and mixers at those businesses trying to help them, but they didn't have the volume, and so the ones that we have now coming out of COVID have adjusted their schedules in terms of when they are open. And that's made a difference for Bankhead, Mississippi, or for Bowlegged Barbecue, or some of the other places that are out there. And so we have to keep that in mind, that's a major issue. And at the same time, where we're looking at restaurants, we thought at one point we were going to get a Denny's down at Market Creek. Okay.
Right.
And we thought that we were going to get a Denny's where Family Health Center is at 47th and Market.
And I'll tell you about Denny's, they put their toe in and take, their toe back out of the water. And especially after the pandemic, through the pandemic, that it has been harder to court restaurants because they have, as you said, Dr. Warren, have had to change, their whole structure. Based on them just kind of being one of the hardest hit industries during that time. So what they're doing is they're planning in the event that happens again, so that they can, stay in the black. So it's been tough, but it is. I am encouraged because there is a lot of buzz about our community. And I'm just asking folks to hold out, be patient. A lot of the things that you've dreamed about are going to come to pass because there's just a lot of energy and a lot of investment in people genuinely wanting our community to thrive, but also seeing that there is a lot of potential to make a lot of money in our community. So I'm very proud of that. And this is what I tell people everywhere I go. District 4 is a place to be. So,
okay. Dr. Thompson?
This is going to be my last question, and this is not a District 4 question, but it was a thing that really caught me by surprise, and it said, new parking structure built downtown. Parking spaces start off at $188,000 a year. And I'm like saying, so what parking structure, or how do we design something that goes downtown in the East Village and they're selling the parking spaces for $188,000?
Well, I have to see what you're looking at.
Okay.
But what I think, and I could be wrong, is that that's how much it actually takes to build out parking structures, especially if they're underground. I don't know if people are charging that. I have not seen that. So I certainly won't speak to that. I just know it's very expensive to build out parking garages. So
Yeah. No, it caught everybody was passing along because East Village is building a new parking structure, and it's where you can actually buy your parking space. And so it's almost like property downtown. And so
mhm.
I said, wow, there's so many different things that are happening. And I was sharing with people that with the different developments of our school plan and the new schools, uh, do you feel that in our community, our school systems are ready for the increase of the population that's coming in based on the apartments that we're building now?
That is such a good question. It should be a part of all of our efforts as we build out. I think uh, the council president was thinking about doing some joint meetings so we could discuss things like that,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't normally do. So that is a really good question. I don't know uh, the school loads right now. I know that it has been very hard for teachers and very hard for students. But I don't know the enrollment rates. I've heard for some schools it's fairly low,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that the resources are there
Mm-hmm.
to handle an influx. So
Can I address that? I spent over a decade as a board member and another decade writing education legislation, and I can tell you, and then more time with National School Boards Association as a director. What happens in this country is when we start trying to plan schools, we're overcrowded because it takes about 5 years to go from planning to construction. By the time most of the buildings are constructed, the population that was intended to be reached is gone. The birth rate is down. And so now we got big new buildings
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have children to sit in those buildings. Now, 40 years ago, there was an entity called the Mott Foundation who brought the concept of community education into communities so that we could make use of those vacant spaces after the school hours. And one of my concerns, I meant to raise it with you earlier, the parks and recreation. Our recreation departments in San Diego are not what it's not what it should be. I mean, it should be operating uh, longer hours into the evening, not
mhm,
locking up at 4:30. The same as the police department. We got these substations that lock up at 5 o'clock when they
mhm.
should be 24-hour entities like they are in other cities. And so somewhere in the council, the culture has to change on these issues. We're not going. We talk about Lincoln. We went through all that trouble to get Lincoln, and we got all the black folks who grew up and went to Lincoln, and Lincoln is majority Hispanic at this point. You talk about Morris, and Morris is Ghana Asian, and so we are not producing the children to backfill the space in terms of what's happening, and we need to look a little more closely at what we do differently. I also want to share with you briefly. I know we got to go, Madam Pro Tem, but I'm also concerned that in San Diego County and City of San Diego, so many of our entities, boards, and commissions, they meet during the 9 to 5 time frame, which does not allow working people to participate, and which is a very key element to the success of local government in other cities like back east. And so we
Mm.
need to look at this culture, the same culture that locks one door at every business at 9 o'clock at night, like 9 o'clock is the witching hour that thieves come out, which is just totally ridiculous. And so we just need to address all of this, and we need to get the community more involved. Those community councils that we have need to become meaningful and workable, and that most of them are modeled after an experiment that came back east, which was neighborhood commissions that they were breaking it up into tracks of 2,000 people to see how those entities would work. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to throw some of those things out. We didn't even get to my favorite pet about youth employment and the city having its
We didn't
own
even get to
policy.
that. That's right.
Yeah, so maybe
Yep.
we want to extend a few minutes so you can address that because I'm tired of us relying upon workforce partnership. They're not a part of the city. And
Well,
can you say
just real
something since you
quick,
got $19 million the mayor's got?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did. And it just came through committee last week through my committee. Um, I stress there that it's very important to have partners. Don't get me wrong. There's people doing this work every day of youth placement, and I certainly honor that. But in order for the city to have our own skin in the game, it's important for us to run this program, and that entails what a young person's experience is going to be like once they hit that door. Who's going to be interviewing them and asking questions? Are they going to be truly invested in the growth of a young person, in the workplace? And that comes with, a lot of sacrifice, because some young people, we have to want, to bring young people in that may never have had experience before, and that's where being intentional about who gets to be a part of this program is extremely important to me. And it's not, it's not going to be it's never the easiest thing. But I do think, from my perspective, we have a vested interest, not only because we really want our young people to succeed, which I absolutely do, but also because we have 1,500 vacancies. I mean, we have a lot, of vacancies, which is impacting our service levels. And for people to be able to come and experience having a steady job of public service, all is not lost. And I think that we can really, we could benefit off of keeping that in-house. So I'm going to be eyeing it
Well,
so that we make sure that that's what happens, because the easier kind of thing is to let someone else run it. And I think it'll show our sacrifice as a city to our young people if we keep it and we do it the right way and we monitor it every step of the way.
Well, I gave a very detailed proposal. I've done it several times now, and I have proposed, just in a nutshell, as a reminder, that an element be created within HR with the city, that every department have at least 12 hours a week for a young person to be assigned to each department, and that the cost of that goes into the city budget, so that there's a screening and acceptance. This is like what we did under the old Neighborhood Youth Corps. And so with every department, we got enough departments to place young people in between the ages of, say, 16 and 24. They can still be in school.
Mm-hmm.
The hours can work around them. We got the Pronto pass scenario with MTS now, so that they don't have to use their money for transportation, because years ago when we first got this, they used their money to get to jobs out in Sorrento Valley, which made no sense. So we have enough in this city, and that 19 million, and y'all have the power to push that. And I've shared this with the mayor, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be bringing these young people in, screening them, and placing them. And I wanted for a long time to see the gang prevention entity abolished and an emphasis put on youth employment and empowerment through the commission, so that the direction change and we bring these people in and we have year-round jobs, because we haven't done it. Now, I'm big on this, Dr. Thompson, because I got my start as a result of a referral from a recreation department. And the recreation department director referred me to Capitol Hill when they were looking for someone to be a gopher for the summer, and it changed the course of my life. And we had people like Jack McGorry, who came to the city out of CETA, and he rose to be city manager, and now he's making so much money, he's given $1 million chair to San Diego State. So, we want to start where we are, and we got enough young people, and I'd be happy to continue to be tapped to help with that. But I'm not going to let one or two political folks take it and act like they came up with the idea. Because this is something that I wrote 40 years ago, and I've implemented nationally across this country. And San Diego is so far behind, and there's so much we can do if we just put our minds to it. So this is why we wanted you here. I hate to stop. We got to have you come back, because we got some more stuff we got to deal with here still with the time remaining.
Yeah, because I know one of the things that we want to say too is that we want to talk about just the development of the area, because we know that there's an organization that's sunsetting, and what's going to happen with that for our community. There's just so much. So if we can get back on your schedule, I know that we're in campaign season and everything else, but I think that there's so many other things. The Black Arts District. There's just tons of stuff to continue to talk about. So we want to say, by all means,
Well, we're going to get you in on a regular basis. We're going to sit down and make up a regular schedule so that we can keep going. You know,
That
if
sounds good.
KUSI can
Cause
do that with the mayor, we can do that with you, and we can make it work. Okay, so
that
people
sounds
won't have
good.
no excuse.
Yeah, no,
And
that sounds
remember
good. There's so
also,
much going on. So
she does come on Black Men and Women United and talk to us, and we continue. You always have an open invitation there. You are a member by birth, so you don't have to worry about getting permission.
and we got to let her. But you got to make your final statement before we leave.
Yes.
well, there's just so much going on, and we're going to continue to focus on economic opportunities for people in the district, and then also reimagining public safety and really combating this idea that we need to racially profile and keep people safe. It doesn't make any sense. So we've done a lot in that area with regards to surveillance, with regard to CPP supporting what's going on at the state level with changing that definition of to make it necessary to actually shoot someone. It's just a shame the things that we have to beg for. But we, from the very beginning, have been very strong on that. And then the safe and healthy communities, when we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about homelessness, park and recreation. These things are also important. And we came in at a time where there is just so much more to be done. So we are just going to continue to work and at least set the foundation so that the next person and the next person has that to build off of. But I'm proud of what we have done. And so I'll be back to talk more about it.
And
Well, we thank you.
we thank God that you are praying elected official, because we need as much prayer as possible.
Thank you
Amen.
again.
Yes, I am.
Have a great evening.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
you too. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Dr. Warren.
Well, Dr. Thompson, we got a lot in the few minutes that we have left to deal with. Number one, with the murder that took place in Uvalde, Texas, the slaughter, if you will. Everybody is rising up again, talking about gun control and what needs to happen. I think the one thing we're seeing different now is we're getting real specific that the Congress has always in the House done its part. It's in the Senate. The spotlight's on the Senate now. And it's even narrowed down to we need just 4 senators to break ranks, and we can overcome Manson and Seneca, and we can more and get these things done. But as we go back a little bit, we know today marks the 2nd anniversary of the murder of George Floyd by those police officers. And so there are a number of demonstrations and remembrances going on. My great disappointment is that this president, who we had no choice but to elect after we looked at what we had before with Donald Trump. This president and this Congress has shown that they can muster $40 billion for Ukraine and come together, but yet they can't give us a Voting Rights Act. They can't give us a George Floyd. The president got to today do an executive order for something that should be in the statute. They can't give us a vote in the Senate so that we don't have to be standing around worrying about what's going to happen with the Supreme Court on Roe v. Wade. The legislation has already passed the House. And so everything that we need in terms of the crises in this country, $22 billion needed right now to continue to fight against the pandemic. We don't have $22 billion for us or for child care or for food supplemental giving, but yet we have the money for Ukraine, and we are rattling our sabers about our support for Taiwan, but we can't deal right here in our own backyard. And when we look at California, I want to make the observation as well. Yesterday we had another in-depth, in custody death in the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, which is just totally ridiculous. And now we are moving toward a primary on June 7th. It is critical that we return Padilla to the Senate because we cannot lose a Democrat. We need it. We need him there, if you will. It's critical that we return our Democratic members to Congress and that we not play around and set the stage for the Republican crazy people to come in. It's critical that we support our Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, not because she's black and from us, but because she represents one of the true defenders of the democratic process. when we see so many states in this country that are really falling by the wayside, putting the conspiracy people in office and threatening to cancel out elections and votes that they don't agree with. So I needed to throw all of these things out there because we got
you
a
ran
lot.
past some things.
Okay,
And one of the
please.
big thing that really was a shocker to me, Herschel Walker is running in Georgia, the former NFL superstar, and he's running as a Republican to basically unseat a sitting Democrat to try to flip it. So they literally have recruited somebody that they think can beat.
Well,
Uh,
I don't think he's going to go anywhere, and
yeah.
so I wouldn't give him the publicity of mentioning his name.
Okay.
I think that we need, Georgia's already shown by the outpouring of votes before yesterday's voting, they've already shown that they are going to overcome all of those laws by sheer numbers and volume. You only got Stacey Abrams running for governor, and, that's going to make a difference, and the people are going to turn out and vote. We're going to put those senators there. We're going to make it happen. We already got a good gubernatorial candidate in Pennsylvania, and that's going to happen. And so we just really, what we have to do in California is not sleep it. We so laid back here, I don't see us talking about voting. And everybody who's able to vote needs to vote. If you're not sure if you can vote, you vote a provisional ballot, a challenge ballot, and they can determine later whether or not it's valid. But we cannot sit this one out. We need to get Malia Cohen in as the controller.
Yeah.
Controller makes a whole lot of money decisions for the state.
But one of the things about even with the voting, for years everybody thought you voted on voting day, and they didn't spend a lot of time realizing that the voting is open now. You can literally
Yes.
come to the registrar of voters right now.
You can go right
And-
there and you can file, you can vote, you can sign up and vote there. And if there's a question, it can be sealed as provisional and counted later. So if we were to do the kind of turnout like they've done in Georgia, we won't be on election day, night of June 7th, standing in line, still waiting to get into the building. We can do this now.
Yeah, and the key thing is that they have literally made voting convenient, because many
Yes.
times people say, I missed it because I was working, or this happened or that happened. Well, literally, the last election, I voted on a Sunday.
Yeah,
Went
Yeah.
to church, then went to vote.
yeah.
So the opportunity for us to be a part of voting and be a part of the democratic process is wide open. Now it's up to us to make the decision to be a part of it.
And even if you have a criminal record or whatever, if you paid your debts to society, don't assume that you can't vote. All efforts have been made in the state. And Dr. Weber was a big person fighting for this when she was still in the legislature. We still need to get out there and make the effort, folks. We need to show up. And if you talk about why we don't have the influence that we want to have, is because people have determined that we're not going to vote. The Asians are going to be voting in record numbers. If we don't watch out what's going on, Yvonne Yu running for controller, she will get the job because the Asians are there. They're there running while we're sitting back complaining. And now's the time to make the vote count because it's so critical following the changes that came out with redistricting. And Tony Thurman there for superintendent. Not because he's the greatest person in the world, but because we need the consistency as we move forward and we can make plans.
Yeah. And so, Dr. Warren, this is the anniversary of the death and the killing of George Floyd. I know lots of people have been talking about it. It comes at a time where we lost over 19 young people and human lives in a mass shooting. And we are still having a discussion about gun control and about law enforcement. When is enough enough?
Enough has been enough, but America has been so wedded to the corruption of the lobbyists and the NRA. And like the people are making it now, it's on 50 members of the Senate. Let's just keep it real. It's not everybody. It's 50 members of the Senate that will not move, that want a moment of silence and a whole bit. I like what Beto O'Rourke did today when he interrupted the press conference that the governor of Texas was holding. When the governor of Texas and Tex Cruz, the senator, they're on the agenda to speak at the NRA this weekend in Houston. And so we need to stand up and be counted and fight that. But I want to mention something else, too, before we go, Dr. Thompson. On the 31st, the San Diego Community College District was to hold an investiture service with the new president of the San Diego Unified San Diego Community San Diego College
Community College District.
Community College District.
But wait a minute, you done said they gonna have a what? Because people like, what did he just say?
Well, the investiture is their ceremony for installing the new president who's already in office. And he had invited Alice Walker, the famous novelist who wrote Color Purple and so many other things, to come. And a backlash arose because she had taken a position of supporting a guy who wrote a book that had very derogatory comments in terms of Jewish people, anti-Semitic, based on some comments from the book. I'm not even promoting his book in terms of naming it. And so at first the president stood by the invitation, talking about the free flow of ideas in terms of a community campus. Then the pressure came from the Jewish community and from others, and then we ended up with this the other day, a cancellation of the event, withdrawal of the invitation for Alice Walker to speak, some elements of our community up in arms because that took place. Others are talking of delving into her writing, her podcast, her essays and journalism theories. And, of course, it's surfaced that in many instances she's been pro-Palestinian, and people are. I mean, Jimmy Carter was supportive for the Palestinians in terms of his whole Peace and Justice Center. And so this thing has been withdrawn. I've tried to deal with all of that editorial this week because if you take that plus the County Human Relations Commission, which is set to vote to cancel the membership of Reverend Hodges because of his position in terms of a statement that he made, even though passing laws is not supposed to be retroactive, they're going back and going to try to remove him anyhow. His lawyers are waiting to file suit, and it's because people are uncomfortable. My concern is that people are becoming uncomfortable, and their discomfort is becoming a substitute for constitutional rights and law, and we can't allow that to happen. And so black people, we have concerns. We saw those concerns manifest in what happened in Lakeside, and we see it going on with ongoing activities. But we are still a divided folks. We still have some people in our community who are more concerned about what kind of publicity they can get than the good of the whole. And we don't even want to forget that the legal lynching that the National NAACP did when it suspended Mrs. Francine Maxwell for 3 years just because she wouldn't put some unknown character on their checking account without vetting it. And so we have really lost some ground locally, and I'm very concerned that people who want excuses for not supporting us will look at what's happening with the NAACP, will really look at the lack of real activity from the Urban League in terms of the kind of social issues that help make these two organizations what they are. And we just kind of sitting back, and we getting to be a personality culture. And so we don't even have to have cancel culture. We just getting to be personality. And I'm concerned about these things. And if you disagree with me, we'd love to hear from you. And when you come to talk, bring a desire to walk and to add some work to it, because we just don't want hot air.
And I do want to say that although we run out of time, as we prepare to go into elections, as we prepare to go into our next season, we have to be ready for the change. And it's not get ready. We had time to get ready. Now we have to be ready, because if we're not ready for this next move and what's getting ready to happen, we will be totally left behind, and it will be one of those things that we won't be able to get back in.
Well, one more thing before we go. I know we're out of time, but you know the county fairs here. They got their banners all over our community. They have not been in touch with our newspaper in terms of reaching our community. They've cut back on the number of stages that they have in terms of African-American participation. And so we just don't want you to run out there so happy to be there to grab a turkey leg that you miss what's happening. Those are public funds. This is a public event, and we are being marginalized while the representation and the presence of the Latino community is being expanded. And I don't have anything against our brothers and sisters, but Again, the fair has some new leadership that seems to have forgotten that they are a public entity and that they are accountable to all of us and not just to their marketing department that decides who they're going to include and who they're going to leave out.
Exactly. And with that being said, this is from the desk of the editor. We want you to tune in week by week. I do want to apologize that we weren't able to get to the lines this evening. It was a jam-packed show, but we will be continued next week. Thank you so much for tuning in from the desk of the editor with Dr.